Guys, it's Rishab, and I'm bringing you day 10 of my road to Civil War. And in this one, I'm reviewing Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy was directed by James Gunn, stars Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Bradley Cooper, Vin Diesel, Dave Bautista, Karen Gillian, and Lee Pace. So, Guardians of the Galaxy was a comic series that wasn't that popular in the 90s. And when this movie was announced, many people, including myself, were wondering, well, what are the Guardians? And the trailers, it looked interesting, but at the same time, we weren't really sure what the Guardians were, so we weren't sure if this would be a good movie or not. So basically, the Guardians, they were a small-time comic series that didn't become popular until the mid-2000s. And they're basically about a team of, outcasts who band together to basically save the galaxy from extraterrestrial forces. And I'm happy to say that I was wrong about this movie. I thought this movie would be a disaster because when I looked up the Guardians, I wasn't that impressed by what I saw. And but when I saw this movie, I have to say I'm glad I was wrong because this is actually a pretty entertaining movie. So first of all, I really liked Chris Pratt as Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord. And he sort of gave me like a more comedic version of Captain America because like Captain America, he's technically a man out of time because as you saw early on in the movie, he was abducted in the 80s as a kid. And basically he's been hanging out with a band of alien mercenaries ever since. Like he even owns a Walkman, and this movie takes place around the same time as the Avengers. So, but he was like a more comedic version of Captain America, I guess. So I really loved Chris Pratt as Star-Lord. He was like I said, he was funny. At the same time, he was like a cool action hero as well. I really liked his the moments where he's like, I'm Star-Lord, and everyone's like, who? Because no one really knows who he is. And then we find out later on in the movie that Star-Lord's a nickname that he actually made for himself, based off of something his mom used to call him when he was a kid. So it was like a running joke throughout the movie, like, who's Star-Lord, right? Zoe Saldana was played Gamora, who's an assassin who was under the command of Ronan, Lee Pace's character, but she decided to betray him when she realized that his intentions were to destroy everything. So she ends up teaming up with Star-Lord and the other Guardians. So she did a great job as Gamora. Hands down, my favorite character in this movie had to be Rocket Raccoon, who was voiced by Bradley Cooper. Rocket Raccoon is basically like the Tony Stark of the team. He was smart. He was funny. He was great with technology. He drank a lot in this movie, and he was easily my favorite character in this movie. Every scene he was in, I loved it, and yeah, I can't wait to see more of him in Guardians 2. And my second favorite character was actually Groot, who was voiced by Vin Diesel. Now, outside of the Fast and Furious series, I didn't know much about Vin Diesel, and I have to say this is probably like the easiest money he ever made. He literally had like 4 words to say in this entire movie. But yeah, he did a great job as Groot. Like, even though like I said, he only had like 4 words: "I am Groot" and "We are Groot." There was also a lot of emotion. It's not like he said them all like the same way. There was also like a little bit of emotion, I guess. And like especially that scene where he says "We are Groot" at the end, where he sacrifices himself to save the other Guardians. That was like a heartfelt moment for me. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, there were actually like one of the people next to me, I could hear him crying at that scene. And yeah, so their acting was on point. And the last person that I really liked in this movie was Karen Gillian as Nebula. So Karen Gillian, if you don't know, she plays Amy Pond in the Doctor Who series. Like she's one of the Doctor's companions, and I didn't know it was her until I saw the credits. I'm like, oh my god, it's Amy Pond, right? Because you couldn't really recognize her under all that makeup and all. And then yeah, it wasn't until the credits when I realized, oh my god, it's Amy Pond. So yeah, she did a great job as Nebula, who's like Gamora's half sister, right? And yeah, so the story overall, it was a pretty simple story, but it was like also like set up for like future movies and especially Infinity War. So basically, Star Lord, he was like I said, he was abducted as a kid in the '80s, and he's basically been hanging out with a group of alien mercenaries ever since. So basically, at the beginning of the movie, we see Star Lord. He's after this object called the Orb, which is apparently one of the most powerful weapons in the entire universe. And we later find out that he gets attacked by a bunch of I guess cyborg assassins. I don't know what to call them. So and then we find out they're working for Ronan, Lee Pace's character, who's also after the orb, and because Ronan is actually working for Thanos. Thanos hired Ronan to take the orb, and in return, Thanos promised Ronan that he would destroy one planet that Ronan hated. I know that sounds dumb, but I'll explain it later. So yeah, so then Star Lord is basically he tries to sell the orb, but when the person finds out that Ronan is after it, he's afraid of Ronan, as a lot of people on that planet are, and so he makes no deal, and that's when he meets Gamora, and then Gamora tries to steal it from him, and then Rocket Raccoon and Groot show up, and basically they all end up getting arrested, and that's where they meet the last member of the Guardians, Drax, who's played by Dave Bautista, and yeah, so basically they escape together, and they basically form an unlikely like friendship, and they're basically trying to keep the orb away from Ronan and to an extent Thanos, and yeah, so that's basically in essence the story of the movie. So the reason I said Thanos promised Ronan to destroy the planet is because Ronan is a Kree, and the Kree have a bad history with a bunch of people called the Nova Corps, who and basically they have a history of war with each other, but recently the two leaders of the two races signed a peace treaty. But Ronan, he's old fashioned, so he doesn't like that peace treaty. He won't be happy until all of the Nova Corps are dead. So that's basically the deal he makes with Thanos. If he get the orb for Thanos, Thanos will destroy that planet for him. But when he gets the orb, instead of giving it to Thanos, he decides that he's gonna use it himself. And then after he destroys the Nova Corps, he's gonna go and kill Thanos. So yeah, and also Thanos is seen in this movie. I didn't expect him to be in this movie. To be honest, I didn't really expect to see him until Infinity War. But he was in this movie, and even though he was there for a limited amount of time, I got chills watching that scene. So he's played by Josh Brolin, and I have a feeling he'll be a great Thanos in Infinity War when they expand on his character and show more of him. So, and the action sequences in this movie were great, especially the final battle. And honestly, the best part about this movie was the soundtrack. It was all these classic songs that our parents grew up listening to. And this movie actually got me into classical songs. I'm not gonna lie, I downloaded like half the soundtrack, and I still listen to them to this day. So the soundtrack was pretty cool. So those are the stuff I liked about the movie. The stuff I didn't like if you notice, I didn't mention all the actors when I was talking about the acting, and that's because not all the actors were on point. So first of all, I'll start off with Dave Bautista. He was decent. Now Dave Bautista, I think he's a wrestler or a boxer. I'm not sure. It's one of the two. And you could tell the acting wasn't his strong point. He did a decent job as Drax, but honestly, I felt like you could have replaced him with a better actor, and it would have made his character better. And yeah, I didn't really like him as Drax. And the other actor I didn't like was Lee Pace as Ronan. So Lee Pace, you may know him from Lord of the Rings as the King of the Elves. I don't remember his character's name, but he's Legolas's father. I mean, he was okay as Ronan, but I guess part of the problem I have with Ronan is that he didn't really have any character development. Like, his motivations were so cliche, and honestly, he's probably the second most underdeveloped villain out of the MCU. So I felt like, yeah, he wasn't a good villain at all. he was worse than Malekith in my opinion. So I didn't like that, and I felt like at certain times the comedy bogged down the seriousness of this movie, because this movie is probably one of the more serious movies of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, not as serious as Winter Soldier or Iron Man, but definitely up there. And I felt like at times, like when there was a serious moment, they inserted comedy just to like bog it down a bit, and I felt like that ruined the moment for me, because some of the moments were actually pretty serious, like the part scene where Star Lord is trying to motivate the other Guardians to join band together to fight Ronan, because none of them want to. They're all afraid of Ronan. Even Rocket Raccoon is like, "Dude, you're asking us to die," and that was a pretty heartfelt moment when they all band together, and then like they basically ended off with a bit of comedy. I'm like, okay, that took away from the moment, but whatever, right? So, guys, overall, Guardians of the Galaxy, it had a great story. It had mostly great acting. The villain wasn't that good, but I mean, yeah, he wasn't the worst villain I've seen, but he wasn't that good. The soundtrack was amazing. The scene with Thanos gave me chills, and even the way the final battle ended with Star Lord doing the dance off thing, it was new and unexpected. Like usually, whenever someone tries to distract a person, they don't start dancing. So I felt like that was kind of funny. Even though I know a lot of people, they don't really like that scene. They feel like that kind of ruined the movie. I actually have a few friends who don't like that scene. They feel like they ruined the movie, but I really didn't mind it. It was a new and unexpected way to distract a villain. And like I said, Star Lord is from the '80s, right? So they had that was basically when like a lot of like dancing was being introduced, and like I said, he didn't really get equipped to modern times. So I guess I don't know what I'm trying to say. So overall, guys, Guardians of the Galaxy was a fun movie. I enjoyed it. Marvel took a comic book that barely anyone had read, and they turned it into a pretty good movie. The soundtrack was amazing, and yeah, I'm gonna give Guardians of the Galaxy an 8 out of 10. So that concludes day 10 of my Road to Civil War and my review of Guardians of the Galaxy. So what did you think of the movie? And comment below if if you have ever heard of the Guardians before this movie came out, because I hadn't, right? And as always, if you like what you see here and you want to see more, like, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.